Hi, my name is Karen, and this is an Introduction to English Grammar, Part 22, Coordination of Clauses. This is for a class given at the University of Utah. Hey, today we'll be talking about coordinating conjunctions and some prescriptions about how we join independent clauses and how to punctuate them. So we need to take a look back at a clause. So a clause is a unit that contains at least a subject and a verb. So if you take a look at these examples, try to determine how many clauses are in each sentence. You can go ahead and pause the video. The answers are on the next slide. So if you take a look at this, the bracketed areas show the clause. So in the first one, the boy went to the store. We have one subject, the boy, and one verb, went. In the second bullet point, we have three clauses. We have she as the subject of the first one and ate as the verb. In the second clause, we have Sarah got as the verb. And then in the third one, she got. Okay. Now, a simple sentence is when we have a subject plus a predicate. We call that an independent clause. Like this example, she likes pie. We have one subject, one verb. A compound sentence is two simple sentences put together with a coordinating conjunction. So we have, again, these two simple sentences, she likes pie and she eats it every day, but they're put together with the coordinating conjunction and. Okay, so we have two subjects, two verbs, and a coordinating conjunction. So coordination refers to joining phrases or clauses together with a coordinating conjunction. Okay, we can coordinate noun phrases, verb phrases, adjectives, and clauses. So an example of coordinated noun phrases would be something like Paul and Mary went to the store. Okay, verb phrases would be something like Paul likes to run and jump. Okay, adjectives is when we coordinate something like she is pretty and smart. Okay. Clauses are when we're coordinating those clauses where we have both a subject and a verb in each thing on the side of the coordinator. Okay. Items that are joined in this way are called coordinated or conjoined, and the sentences that are created by coordinating full clauses are called compound sentences. So coordinating conjunctions are special words that make coordination happen. The most common ones are and, or, so, and but. We also see for and yet. Those are a little bit less common. And then the coordinator nor as well. Okay. Notice that some of these words have the same form. They look the same as other words like other prepositions, but they don't behave in that same way. So here are some examples. We have John ate a cake and Mary ate a pie. And is our coordinator. We have both a subject and a verb on each side. So we have two independent clauses that are joined together by a coordinating conjunction. Okay. Here we have another example where yet is the coordinator. Here's one with but. Okay. I've put this first clause in a bracket because there are actually three clauses here in this sentence. And so I wanted to separate that out because the coordinator for is coordinating she had goosebumps and she had just taken a cold shower. Okay, but when I arrived is also a clause. In this case, it's a dependent clause because it has the subordinating conjunction when. But we're going to talk about that in a different presentation. Okay, here we have one with or, and here we have one with so. Now, the coordinating conjunctions express a relationship of something between the two clauses. So it's sometimes difficult to say what the meaning is of the coordinator by itself. Okay? We often use logical explanations or Boolean operations to explain the meaning of these clauses. Okay? So here we have some for and. Okay? It can show that both things are true or some sort of sequential or time relationship. Okay, but we have to show that both, to show that both things are true. And then sometimes it works to show that what we expect after the first clause is not actually true. Okay, and sometimes we use it as a marker of contrast. Okay, or is one that talks about whether or indicates that only one of the clauses is true. Sometimes it's used as a warning. Sometimes it's used to introduce things, and it can be introduced as a repair, meaning that we're fixing what we said. Okay, so is often used to express results, and sometimes it can be used to express inferences. It's also used in conversation for turn taking. Now let's talk about what the prescriptivists say. So in general, when two items are coordinated with a coordinating conjunction, there is no comma. So when I coordinated the noun phrases, right, Paul and Mary went to the store, we don't use a comma. However, when we're coordinating them with a coordinating conjunction and it's two clauses, then prescriptive rules say that we may put a comma before the coordinating conjunction. Okay. However, the comma is a little bit variable. So the rule that I always learned about this is that we don't use a comma when the two clauses are short. So if we think about the clauses we've seen, I eat pie and I eat cake. I wouldn't necessarily put a comma before and because both of those clauses are short, but it is optional in that situation. Okay. Sometimes though your style guide or your professor might have a specific prescription about how they feel about those commas. Okay. So here are some examples. John ate a cake and Mary ate a pie. So with the comma and without, they tried for 3 hours to steer the boat from the storm, yet the boat sank. Okay, winter is warm in Miami but cold in Moscow. No comma here. It would be acceptable to put a comma. There's no real rule about what it means to have a clause be short. Okay. So the coordinator nor talks about negation. Okay? In a nor structure, generally the first clause is negated and the second clause needs no additional negation if it has nor. Okay, so I don't have any peas, nor do I have any carrots. Notice though that in these nor clauses that there's do support. So it provides evidence that negation's already there because we often use do with negated words. All right, let's talk about negation with coordination. So when a coordinated clause is negated, okay, with neither or nor, then subject inversion happens. Sometimes we have do support if there's no other auxiliary. Okay, so neither can he speak, nor can he walk. Neither will they read the books, nor will they return them. Okay, so instead of saying they will read the books, they will return them, we now have subject-verb inversion. Let's look at another meaning of but. Sometimes when we use it with a negative, it can express an alternative. Both clauses are true, however, the first one is negated and the second one's affirmative. Okay? But is also sometimes used in a combination with rather or also for the same meaning. So I don't have curly hair, but rather straight hair. John didn't like the novel, John didn't just like the novel, but he also liked the movie. Okay. It can have different meanings though with but, so you need to double check what the meanings are. Other languages sometimes have a separate word to express those different meanings, where in English we just have one word to express both of those meanings. Okay, let's take a look at some punctuation. Okay, so prescriptive rules say that it's okay to put a comma before the conjunction if you're coordinating full clauses. We do not put a comma if we're not coordinating clauses. So if there's not a subject and verb on both sides of the coordinating conjunction, then there should never be a comma. Okay. Sometimes when we want to join independent clauses, we want to do something without a comma. Okay. One case is that we can use the semicolon. We have to use this without using a conjunction. So here are some examples. Okay, prescriptively good. I saw a lot of salsa at the party, semicolon, I saw a lot of chips also. Notice that there's no and. Okay, it would also be correct to say I saw a lot of salsa at the party and I saw a lot of salsa at the party and I saw a lot of chips also. Okay, comma there could be optional. I generally, when the clauses are this long, include a comma. prescriptively good, I saw a lot of salts at the party, period. In addition, comma, I saw a lot of chips. So what we have going on here is we have two independent clauses that we're choosing to join together in multiple ways. So we can join them together as two separate sentences. We can join them together as two independent clauses with no conjunction joined by a semicolon, or we can join them together with a coordinating conjunction and with a comma or not. Okay. However, it gets tricky for people when they're working with English, that often we have many clauses that come together in a sentence, and we call this a run-on. So if we don't punctuate correctly and we just use a lot of clauses, then we call this a run-on. Okay. It seems like two clauses is plenty in a sentence when they're coordinated. If they're not joined with a semicolon, then that's also considered a run-on. Okay, here's an example. I just saw the movie Deep Thrill. It was really nice. So we have two different independent clauses. It was really nice, and I saw the movie. Okay, but they're not coordinated with either a conjunction or separated by punctuation. Okay, so those would both be incorrect. One kind of run-on sentences that we particularly dislike is called a comma splice. So this is when we use a comma in place of a semicolon with no coordinating conjunction. So when we join two independent clauses together with no coordinating conjunction, we should have a semicolon. If we use a comma instead and no coordinating conjunction, then we call that a comma splice. That's particularly frowned upon. Okay, incorrect. We also have a prescription about using coordinators at the beginning of a sentence. It says something like, you should never start a sentence with a coordinating conjunction, and, but, for, so. However, the more that people become proficient writers, the more that they can break this type of rule. So you will see this in writing, even though it is generally discouraged when we talk about prescriptive rules. Okay, here are some examples. If you take a look at these sentences, you can see that occasionally it's okay to put it together. The other thing that happens is if you get really famous as a writer, then you can do whatever you want with English grammar rules. Okay, but prescriptions don't seem to have a clear definition of how much is too much when we're using it at the beginning. Okay. The other thing that prescriptivists say is that we shouldn't use too much coordination. But again, how do we decide how much is too much? So for me, I generally don't coordinate with a coordinating conjunction more than two clauses in one sentence. But there is no specific definition that tells us what it is that is okay and what's not okay. Okay, so when they say it's too much is bad, they don't give us a clear definition of which. So here we have two examples. If you read through these paragraphs and kind of decide which one is better, one employs more coordination with coordinating conjunctions, the other one employs more punctuation. You can take a look at these paragraphs to determine which way you feel like is a better writing. We have a second example here, same thing. In one case we use a lot of coordinating conjunctions, in the other case we use more punctuation and other techniques to break up the sentences or to join the sentences together, depending on how you look at it. So in both instances for me, the second paragraph feels better, more flow. I don't like to use the same word too much, so whether it's and or but, I try not to use those same words over and over again. I like some sort of variety in my writing. Okay, so again, the idea is that we don't know how much is too much, but it seems like when we have more than two clauses in the same sentence, that seems to bother us with coordination. Okay, there's some conjunctions that correlate things where we put marks on both clauses. We already saw the example of neither nor, but if you take a look, we have either or, not only blah blah blah, but also blah blah blah. Okay, these are ones where we mark both clauses. So what we need to know today is that if we are joining two independent clauses, okay, again, a clause is a subject and a verb. If we're joining together two clauses, then we don't need a comma with a coordinating conjunction if the clauses are short. If the clauses are long, then we generally have a comma in there. Okay, but we don't use a comma to join clauses with no conjunction. Like this sentence, we should use a semicolon instead, where there is no conjunction. Okay, don't use too much coordination, even though we don't know how much is too much. And it's okay to start a sentence with a coordinator sometimes. So generally, our prescriptions here are very strict about the way we use commas and semicolons without a coordinator, but the other prescriptions in this chapter are a little bit more iffy, and we can make some personal decisions on how we want to use those.